Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, June 30th, 2023. As you may know, I'm a sales coach and trainer. And if you're looking at my banner, it says high performance sales coach. That's right. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them achieve measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network as a place where salespeople can come and hang out, network with each other, get advice and coaching, learn how to earn more money, and of course, to elevate the profession of sales. If you've been with us before, you might know that every Friday at 10 a.m., I do a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales, or we do a live training. Typically, it's an interview, but this week we have another training. Our guest let me know on Tuesday that he wasn't going to be able to make it. It happens. Life gets in the way sometimes. So I am going to pick up where I left off 2 weeks ago, where we started talking about sales training. And I've got some good stuff for you today that I think you're really going to appreciate. I wanted to point out before I get started that it's June 30th, which means it's the end of Q2, which means you're halfway through the year. You've still got 6 months, though. So if you are not on track to hit your goal, whatever your goal is, and by the way, if you don't have your goal written down, a financial specific goal on a piece of paper somewhere or on a poster or someplace where you can see it constantly, you're making a big mistake. You need to be focused on your financial goal each and every day. So if you're not at least halfway to your goal, then it's time to take some action. Talk to your manager, talk to an associate, find a coach. Doesn't have to be me. There's a lot of people out there who can help you make sure that you don't blow the entire year. It is not too late. Of course, that's depending on your sales cycle. If you're selling something that has a 2-year sales cycle, then it is too late for this year, unless you had some stuff going on 2 years ago. But for most of us, we still have time. So take action now. There's still time to have a great year. And something else I want to point out just before I get into the training is uh, I often speak to people who say at this time of year that it's impossible to sell during the summer. And the reason is everybody's on vacation. I'm not on vacation. Are you on vacation? Probably not if you're listening to me. So the thing about us, at least us here in America, we don't take, 8 weeks or 10 weeks of vacation. There are countries in the world where they take the entire summer off, but that's not us. We take a week, maybe 2 weeks. So there are still people in their offices, at their places of business, who need what you have. Prospect your rear end off. It solves most sales issues. It really does. Prospecting consistently and effectively solves almost every sales challenge. So with that, let me say hello. Let's say John Hill is here today. Good morning. Good to see you, John Hill. Bruce Casserman, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name every other time I've said it, Bruce. Thank you for correcting me. Michael North, good to see you, my friend. All right. Now, not only do I have a presentation for you, but I think I figured out how to show you my presentation so that you don't have to stare at my big mug. I know last time I shared my screen, but it was mostly me and just a little PowerPoint. But today, there we go. Now you get to see the really important thing. So last time we spoke about, oh, by the way, now I can still see the comments. I'm really figuring out the StreamYard thing after, I can't remember whether it's been 2 or 3 years of doing this. So last time we started at the beginning of the sales process, where you have to meet with people for the first time and quickly gain their trust and their like. In other words, establish rapport with them. And then we went on to discuss that you have to gain the right to ask questions. And I believe you do that by getting people to ask you a question. And the question we want them to ask you is, what is it about you? Or what do you have for me? And they may not say the words, because the way I do it is by saying, would it help if I tell you a little bit about my company? And everybody says yes. And then it's time to go into your brief commercial. And we talked about how to develop a brief commercial. We also talked about one of my favorite things, softeners. A softener is a word or a phrase that you put before a question, which softens the question and makes it more conversational. So all that stuff is leading up to what I consider the most important part of the sales process, which is asking questions. Most salespeople believe, and most people believe, that sales is about convincing and persuading and talking people into things. It's not. Sales is simply a conversation or a series of conversations leading to help the other person choose to do business with you. And most salespeople think it's about giving a great presentation and being a strong closer. It's not. If you're a great presenter, terrific. I'm a professional presenter. I can present with the best of them, but that's not what closes business for me. And I know how to close people strong. I sold Encyclopedia Britannica door to door for 8 years, door to door in airports, and state fairs, and things like that. I know how to get people to make an immediate decision. But The world has changed from 30 or 40 years ago where we could pressure people into things. Are there still salespeople who use pressure tactics? There sure are, but nobody likes them. Nobody wants to do business with them. And I don't think that's what you want to be. So you don't have to push anybody into anything. What you do have to do is ask great questions, listen actively to the answers, and tell great stories. And today we're going to talk about asking questions because I do believe that is the most important part of the sales process. So, if questions are the most important part of the sales process, and they are, the question always becomes, what questions should I be asking? And the questions that you should be asking your prospect are the questions that uncover for you what makes sense to your prospect. Now, that may be a little confusing, and you may be saying, what the heck are you talking about, Jeff? Making sense to the prospect, and how do I uncover those questions? I promise you, I'm going to give you an example in a little bit that tells you that, and I think it'll become crystal clear. What makes sense to your prospect about what you have to sell them is what you have to find out. In fact, what you have to find out from them is what makes sense to them about it. So, in other words, we do everything we do because it makes sense. I've been doing this vlog, podcast, and podcast for the last, I can't remember, it's either 2 or 3 years. I don't get paid for this. I love doing this, and it makes sense for me to do it, not only because I love helping people. I've been successful in my career of almost 50 years, and I like to give back. And to be brutally honest, this is not a bad way for me to become known as a thought leader in the industry. Every time I do one of these, people may be hearing it that have never heard of me before. And there's always the possibility that one of them wants to bring me in to train their team or hire me as their coach. So it makes sense to me every Friday at 10 a.m. to invest an hour and plus the little prep time I do to do this. Everybody does everything they do because it makes sense to do those things, including buy stuff. So we have to find out, regarding what we have to sell them, what makes sense to our prospect about that. Now, the beauty of this is that what makes sense to your prospect is the same thing that makes sense to my prospect. And that is whatever they're doing now or whatever they've done in the past regarding what you have to sell them. And we have to be like a journalist. If you ever took a journalism course in high school or college, perhaps, you know that journalists are taught to ask the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And that's exactly what we have to do too as salespeople. Regarding what we have to sell them, we want to know what makes sense to them by asking them, who are you working with? Where are you doing it? When are you doing it? Why are you doing it that way? What are you doing? We have to find out the answers to those questions. We're not going to ask them exactly in that way. And I am going to give you an example in a moment that's going to show you how I ask in my business. But we really need to find out what makes sense to them regarding what we have to offer them. And that, again, is whatever they're doing now or whatever they've done in the past regarding what we have to sell them. And of course, we always want to know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? The sooner we can find out from our prospect what they're really trying to accomplish, and they're not always good they're not always good at expressing it. If I could speak, I'd be a professional speaker. They're not always good at expressing it because they may never have been asked a question the right way. So we have to help them get to where they can explain to us what they really want, what they really need. And I just had this conversation yesterday with a coaching client. Sometimes when they tell us what they need, we have to be the person to tell them, I know that's what you think you need, but you don't really need that. What you actually need is X. Now, you may say it in different words, but you want to make sure that your prospect understands exactly what you can do for them, even if they don't know what they really need, and they often don't. There's an old saying that says the customer is always right. I think that's a mistake. The customer is not always right. They're always the customer, which means they can always give you an appointment or not. They can always give you their money or not, but they're not always right. And it's our job as sales experts, as sales professionals, to be the one who tells them, I got it, but here's what I would recommend. Here's what I think you really need. Here's what's going to help you accomplish what you really want to accomplish. There's a great book on this subject called The Challenger Sale. I think it's a terrific book. I think it's a terrific system. I think it's very difficult to implement unless you're an enterprise organization with a lot of money to invest, but really good stuff and a worthwhile read. Pete Ekstrom, good to see you. Pete Ekstrom says you're on fire. Okay, I hope not. It's getting a little warm here in Long Beach, but thank you for the compliment. I'm revved up and ready to go, and it's a holiday weekend. All right, so let's say I want to sell sales training to a vice president of sales, and the person's name is Robert. What I need to find out from Robert is what makes sense to Robert regarding training his salespeople. Because remember, I want to sell him sales training. The only way I'm going to be able to do that effectively, unless I'm going to do what the typical salesperson does, is to find out what makes sense to them and show him a better way. Excuse me, because when you show somebody a better way, it makes better sense. So I'm going to ask questions after I establish rapport with Robert and after I ask him to tell me a little bit about himself. That's how I'm going to establish rapport, and then ask him, would it help if I tell you a little bit about my company? And then I deliver my brief commercial. I'm going to start asking questions of Robert that help me figure out what makes sense to Robert about training his salespeople. And remember, what makes sense to Robert is whatever he's doing now or whatever he's done in the past. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared to ask the right questions. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, how to come up with the right questions. And then I want to ask them in a conversational way. So one of the questions I would ask Robert is, hey, Robert, I'm just curious about something. When a brand new salesperson joins your team, what training programs do you currently use to get them up to speed? And then I'm going to do, let's see if this is in our PowerPoint. Nope. I'm going to do the most difficult thing. By the way, that's my crack team, not putting in the slide that I needed. And of course, when I say my crack team, I'm talking about me. I want to find out what programs he has in place right now to take his people up to speed when they first join his team. Now, he could give me a lot of different answers. Robert might say, well, Jeff, we're not doing anything right now, which is good for me because now that gives me an opportunity to show him how sales training might help him increase sales at his company. But what that means is, up until now, it's made sense to Robert to not train his team. Otherwise, he would have been training them. Or he might say, well, Jeff, we use Miller Hyman, a very well-known, very large sales training company, or we use Sandler, or we use Adrian Miller, a dear friend of mine who's also we call each other friendly competitors right here on Long Island, a terrific sales trainer. Or he might say, well, Jeff, I have them read a book. I send them to a seminar. I have them watch free YouTube videos. It's not that it doesn't matter what Robert says to me, because I need to know what makes sense to him about training his brand new salespeople. But I don't really care what his answer is, as long as I find out what makes sense to Robert about training his brand new salespeople. And when he answers this question, I now know what makes sense to him. Then, once he's explained to me how he trains his brand new salespeople, I'm going to say this. Well, that's interesting. So out of curiosity, once a salesperson's been on your team, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months, maybe 5 months, they're probably not killing it yet, but maybe they've taken brought in a couple of easy sales. They're not killing it, but they're doing okay. Once they've been there a few months, what kind of training do you offer them to get to the next level? What do you have now? And then once again, I'm going to do the most difficult thing for salespeople, which is shut up. I'm going to stop talking, which isn't easy for a guy like me who likes to talk a lot. But I've trained myself to just shut up and listen. It's one of the most important things you can do. Ask questions and shut your darn mouth. Now, while Robert is explaining to me first how he trains his brand new salespeople, and now after I've asked this question, how he trains his not brand new, but still fairly new salespeople, I am being quiet. I'm also looking Robert in the eye, just like I'm looking you in the eye right now, for those of you who are watching us live on video. By the way, I forgot to say, if you're watching us live on Facebook, please feel free to say hello, or any of the other places we're streaming. If you're on Facebook and you haven't connected your account to StreamYard, I'm not going to know your name. It's just going to say Facebook user. And if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And finally, if you have any questions for me, because I figured out how to use StreamYard better today, I can actually see your questions while you're talking. So I'm looking Robert in the eye. I'm being quiet. I'm blinking occasionally because I don't want to look like a stalker. I'm going to take notes, whether I'm on the phone, whether I'm using video conferencing, or I'm live. I'm going to take notes of the important things that he's telling me, because I want to remember these things. And I want Robert to believe that his words are important to me, because they are. And of course, that helps me later on when I go back to my office, think about everything we talked about, enter all that information into my CRM. And when it comes time to put together a proposal, I've got good, valid information. I'm also nodding my head slightly, like I'm doing right now. Not this nod, not the huge nod, but a little subtle psychological nod that's encouraging Robert to continue talking. The more I give that little nod, it says, I'm listening to you, Robert. Please continue. And I'm also going to make noises and sounds and say things that encourage Robert to continue talking, because the more Robert continues talking, the more information I'm going to get about what he's doing now to train his salespeople, what makes sense to him, and how I can help him do it better. So I'm going to do things like, really? No kidding. What made you do that? How'd that work out? Why that way? So I'm encouraging Robert to talk as long as he can about, just like we did when we were establishing rapport, about himself, now explaining to me how he trains his salespeople, what makes sense to Robert. So I've asked 2 questions about that now, and then I've got 73 more questions behind those 2, all designed to tell me pretty much one thing and one thing only: what makes sense to Robert about training his salespeople. Because once I know what makes sense to him, I am now in a position to come back with a proposal and say, well, here's what you're doing now, Robert. And here's how Jeff Goldberg and Associates can help you do it better. Because when I show Robert a better way, it should make better sense to Robert. And if people do everything they do because it makes sense, and they do, that means Robert should become my client. He should buy from me. Now, I'd be lying if I told you that everybody becomes my client just because I have a better methodology than the typical salesperson who walks in and says, thank you so much for your time. Let me tell you why Jeff Goldberg and Associates is the greatest coaching and training firm in the world. Nobody likes that. You don't like doing it. They don't like hearing it. So we want to be involved in a conversation where we're asking questions and letting them give us the answers. And you may have heard the old expression, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you speak. It's fairly impossible to do that during the entire sales process, but you can certainly do it here in the questioning phase, which, by the way, takes up the majority of your sales process. If you're doing it right, you should be able to be listening way more than you're speaking. This is your chance to let your prospect be the star. You don't have to be the star of this conversation. You don't need to dazzle people with your brilliance. You just need to have a human conversation because you're dealing with another person. I know it seems like you might be selling to a company, but at the end of the day, you're really human to human. So we want to pay attention to the words that they're saying, and we want to give them every opportunity to explain to us what makes sense to them about training their salespeople, in my case, or whatever it is that it is in your case. For Bruce, it's how do I save for retirement? How do I shelter my taxes? Things like that. For Mr. North, my friend Mr. North, it's how do I hire better people? How do I retain the good talent that you've brought to me? Pete Ekstrom, a brilliant trainer when it comes to cold calling. He has the gold call. Look him up online. He's terrific, Pete Ekstrom. So Pete wants to know, what are you doing now to get your people to make more cold calls and get more effective so they can have more appointments? John Hill, the trade show coach, he helps people do better at trade shows. What are you doing now to increase your sales at a trade show, or increase the amount of leads? So these are the things that we need to know if we're going to be effective sellers. A better way, once you know what they're doing, a better way makes better sense to them. So they should become your client, and you got to be like a journalist. You got to be really, really curious. So one of my favorite questions, and this PowerPoint did not come out exactly right, but I think you can still see the words. One of my very favorite questions when I'm speaking to a prospect is this: Robert, let's say you and I decide that we're going to work together. And I want you guys to notice, I did not say, let's say you decide to hire me or you decide to engage my services. Let's say we decide to work together. And I'll tell you something, guys. I don't know about you. I don't work with everybody who wants to work with me. I pick and choose my clients carefully. Now, I'm at a stage in my career and my success where I can afford to do that, but I pretty much almost always been that way. You don't want to take on bad business. Nightmare clients are exactly that. They are a nightmare. They rob you of your time and your attitude. I won't work with anybody who's not going to be fun. I won't work with anybody who's not going to pay me exactly what I'm asking for. I won't work with anybody who's not going to pay me on my terms. So you want to make sure that you're working with the right prospect. So when I say to Robert, let's say we decide to work together, and 6 months from now, we're sitting right here back in your office, what would have to have happened in the last 6 months for you to go, Jeff, wow, I am so glad I decided to engage your company? Now, when Robert answers that question, and you should ask this early on, when Robert answers this question, I know exactly what he's looking for. When I say, Robert, what would have to have happened in the last 6 months to make you say, wow, this was a great choice? He's going to tell me exactly what he wanted. Well, my salespeople have more confidence. My salespeople are making more appointments with decision makers. My salespeople have a shorter sales cycle. My salespeople are closing more business. Not only are they closing more business, they've increased the profitability per sale. Well, Guess what? That's exactly what I do. So pretty much all I have to say is, you got the right guy. You got it on the head. You must have searched for those terms, because those are the exact things I bring to the table. And of course, I'm not going to say it exactly that way, my friends, but that's the kind of thing that you want to get across. You want to find out what they really need and then give it to them. And let's see. Adam Holzer says, Jeff, go. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, yeah, we can still do that. Adam Holzer says, nightmare clients only cause more ripples of bad energy. Also, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, there's no doubt about that, my friend. But yeah, you don't need bad energy. And here's the thing, and I'm glad you said that, Adam, because when you're dealing with a nightmare client or even just a bad client, it's taking up your time, which you could be selling and using with somebody else who's more fun to work with, who's easier to work with, who you enjoy working with. And the thing that I found, and I'm going to get slightly metaphysical on you. When you fire a client or you turn down a prospect who you just think is not right for you, just not going to be good, you're creating a space for a better prospect or a better client to show up. I'm not bragging, but I have fired clients more than once. I've taken on an assignment, realized I made a mistake, or I found out later on that it was a mistake that I couldn't have anticipated. And I'll say, I'm done. I'll fire you. If I've taken your money, I'll give it back to you in some instances. When I'm hired as a coach, here's something you might like. When I am hired as a coach, I let my coaching clients know that if you break two promises to me, you break two commitments to me, I'm firing you as a client. If you've already paid me, you're not getting your money back. I don't want to work with anybody on a coaching basis or on any basis, but certainly as a coach, unless I'm going to get them results. And one of the things I do with my coaching clients is I hold them accountable. They make commitments to me, and I hold them accountable to those. Break two commitments, why are you paying me? And it doesn't matter whether I charge $1 a session or $1 million a session. And of course, it's somewhere in between. Why would you want to do it unless you're getting the results? So work with good people and leave a space open rather than taking on bad business, because you'll find the good business if you're out there looking for it. Thank you for adding that in, my friend, Mr. Holzer. Okay, so asking the right questions and listening actively to the answers is the key to effective selling. It's not your presentation skills. It's not your strong closing skills. Ask the right questions, listen actively. And I think next time we'll talk about active listening. So the key that often comes up when I train salespeople, especially at large corporations, is, well, Jeff, if questions are the key to selling, what are the right questions to ask? And I love that question. And I know it's coming every time, because there's always somebody who raises their hands and says, Jeff, what questions should I be asking? Well, there's a methodology that I teach salespeople, which I'm going to share with you right now, which is perfect for coming up with what questions you should ask. And it's called stream of consciousness brainstorming. Now, stream of consciousness brainstorming is a problem solving and idea generation methodology. John Hill says it's so true. Asking the right questions is crucial, especially for trade shows. It's true for everybody, Mr. Hill. And you're right. At a trade show, you have very little time, so you got to pack it in real quick. So, in order to come up with the right questions, and I do this live with sales audiences on a regular basis, and I actually give them time to use this, and I'm going to explain how you use it. But it's a way to come up with ideas or solve problems. So, most of us spend all our time working in our business, and we have to. Working in our business is how we make money. So let's say you're a lawyer. Working in your business would include going to networking functions to develop new prospects, meeting with your actual clients, speaking to other attorneys, maybe in your firm, and opposing counsel, meeting with prospective clients to try to convince them to become your client, reading briefs, going to court, all those excuse me, all those day-to-day activities for an attorney are working in the attorney's business. For me, prospecting is part of what I do every day. Coaching is part of what I do. Training, all those things are me working in my business. And that's how I make money. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be working in your business. Of course you should. That's how you make a living, hopefully a good one. But what most of us never take the time to do is work on our business. And I learned this from the very first coach I hired when I decided to take on a coach. Not a sales coach, but at that time I was looking to transform my business from corporate training to public training, where I was actually creating the audiences. Turned out I didn't want to do it after I thought about it for a while. But the first thing this fairly expensive coach taught me was this concept of working on your business, actually taking the time to think. You're not doing the activities that are going to make you money, but you're thinking, how can I do things better? How can I do things differently? How can I be more effective? How can I pivot on a dime when I need to? When you invest the time to work on your business, typically it pays huge dividends. And my coach wanted me to commit to 1 hour a day, every day, 5 days a week. In other words, 5 hours a week, doing nothing but sitting back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling or having my eyes closed and thinking, what can I do differently? How can I make more money? What could I do? What new products could I add? Working on my business. I refused to commit to 5 hours, but I did do it for 3 hours a week. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, at the end of the day, I would do an hour. And miracles started happening because you actually have most of the answers. I believe we're all tied into a universal consciousness. Call it God, call it whatever you want to, but there's a universal consciousness out there and you are plugged into it. I believe you always know the right thing to do. However, we often don't trust ourselves. We don't think we have the answers. Who am I to know? But call it gut instinct, call it feminine intuition. We're all plugged into something. So when you take the time to work on your business, I promise you, miracles can happen. So now is a great time to work on your business. When would now be the right time to shake things up? When would now be the right time to prospect differently and bring in more leads? When would now be the right time to maybe reach out to different clients than you typically do? When would be the right time to consider where is the opportunity? What are the other guys not doing? The other gals not doing? There's opportunity everywhere. And I'm hearing a lot about the economy. I listen to the news, sometimes to my detriment. The economy seems to be roaring for some people, but other people haven't caught up. But for most of us, there's plenty of opportunity out there if we just know how to go out and find it and deliver the goods. So now is a great time to work on your business. So this is a creative process. So how do you get creative? Well, you use stream of consciousness brainstorming to solve your problems and generate ideas. So here's how you actually do it. The first thing is you've got to have an open mind and a willingness to be creative. Now, why do I say a willingness to be creative? It's because if you had asked me, I'd say 6 or 7 years ago, Jeff, are you a creative guy? I would have told you I'm not. I'm not a creative guy. I'm a guy who can get things done if you tell me what to do, but I'm not the guy who thinks of stuff. Turns out everybody's creative. All you have to do is be willing to accept for this exercise that I believe you are creative too. You don't have to believe it yourself. Trust Jeff. You are creative. You need a legal pad and a pen or a pencil or something to write with a crayon. I always advise people, don't do this on your computer. Writing things out is way more immersive than typing them. And you need a set amount of time to do this exercise and a way to track it. And I advise you, if you're going to use your phone to track it, turn mute everything on your phone other than your timer. Better to have some kind of a timer that maybe will ding when it goes off. But you have to have some way to time this process. Choose a time limit. Now, when I do this exercise, I do it for 30 minutes at a time. That's not the right amount of time. That's just the right amount of time for Jeff. You can do it for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever you want. I'd say the first time, maybe try it for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. See how it works for you. You might want to go longer, but there's no right or wrong amount of time. Just choose a time limit. Step number 2, get to a quiet place physically. So I'm right now in my office. There's my cell phone here. There's my landline phone. There's my computer that I'm working on right now, which dings every time I get an email. And if you're anything like me, when you hear that ding, you want to check it because it could be Bill Gates saying, hey, Jeff, even though I'm not the CEO of Microsoft anymore, I want you to come and train the entire team worldwide. Don't laugh. It could happen. One of these days it might. So I don't want to be distracted by any of this stuff when I'm doing stream of consciousness brainstorming. I actually go into another room where there are no phones, no distractions, no TV, no nothing. Sometimes I actually will do this at the beach, and you might, I think I've mentioned it before. I live a block from the ocean on Long Island, New York. It's a pretty damn great place to live. And I'll go to the beach and do this. Now, you might argue, well, the sound of the waves could be distracting and there's people around you. That stuff all fades into the background for me when I'm at the beach. But it doesn't matter where you're doing it. Just get to a quiet place physically. And then you need to also get to a quiet place mentally. So if you know how to meditate, I know many people do, many people don't. Just meditate for like a minute or two. If you don't know how to meditate, I'm going to teach you right now. So I meditate on a mantra, and my mantra is Om Namah Shivaya. which means I honor the self within me. I took transcendental meditation when I was still in college. They gave me a mantra. A mantra is just a word or a sound that you repeat over and over that eventually drives out all other thoughts. So you're really in the moment, you're quieting your mind, and eventually it all goes away when you do it for long enough. So my mantra when I was in college was I'm, like I apostrophe am, I'm. And I would just sit for 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, just closing my eyes and repeating over and over mentally, I'm. Now it's Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I do not say it out loud. It's all happening in my mind when I'm quiet. And even better to include if you're going to use a mantra, or if you don't want to use a mantra, just do deep breathing. Deep breathing is a form of meditation. And when I say deep breathing, here's what I mean. Normally, you're not thinking about your breathing. Breathing is part of your autonomic nervous system, which means it's happening all day long, whether you're thinking about it or not. Most of us are not breathing deeply. Most of us are breathing shallowly. That's just how we breathe. We're not thinking about it. But when you want to meditate or you want to get yourself into a more meditative state, you want to breathe very deeply in for a count of 5. So you're really try not to choke while you're doing it. You're filling your lungs completely for a slow count of 5. Then you hold your breath for a slow count of 5. Then you exhale fully for a count of 5. And once again, just like breathing in, normally we aren't breathing out fully either. When you really concentrate on it, you will find that there's way more air in your lungs than you thought previously, and you'll get that out. So in for a count of 5, hold for a count of 5. Out for a count of 5, hold for a count of 5. You do that 3 times, that's 20 seconds each. There's your minute. Or 6 times, there's 2 minutes. I can almost guarantee you that you will be in a calmer state, a more present state, if you just do deep breathing for a minute or 2. So get yourself to a quiet place physically, get yourself to a quiet place mentally. I'm going to take a quick look at this. Bruce says, interesting. My business coach tells me not to be looking at my emails consistently. Check out my emails 3 times a day. You're absolutely 100% right, Bruce. In fact, Microsoft used to give a class on Outlook where they would said, only open your email 3 times a day. I didn't say I was perfect, my friend. I try my best, but I do get a lot of emails. I have numerous clients, and I like to be responding quickly. That may sound like an excuse, just me. So step number 3, you want to ask yourself the question out loud. Whatever you're trying to solve or whatever you're trying to figure out, ask yourself that question out loud. I know you're sitting alone at the beach or in your living room or someplace like that, but ask yourself the question out loud. And when I'm working with salespeople, the question that I tell them to ask is, let's assume my prospects would give me unlimited time and answer every question with complete honesty. What questions would I ask? Now, will a prospect give you unlimited time? Nope. Are they going to answer all your questions with complete honesty? Maybe. There's an old saying that the buyer is a liar. I don't know that that's necessarily true in most cases, but let's assume they'll give you, they would sit in their office with you for days. And every question you ask, complete honesty. In that case, what questions would you ask? So remember, you're in a quiet place physically, you're in a quiet place mentally, and now you've said, assuming my prospects would give me unlimited time and answer every question with complete honesty, what questions would I ask? Now you have to have your pad of paper and your pen or pencil in your hand hovering over the paper, and then you just stop. Some other questions might be, excuse me, oh, I don't even have anything to drink. I was just reaching for my drink. Where are the opportunities I haven't previously gone after? What markets are my competitors ignoring? How can I have a better relationship with my kids, my spouse, my business partner? You can use this for anything. I just happen to teach it for sales purposes. So again, our question is, assuming our prospects would give us unlimited time and answer every question with complete honesty, what questions would I ask? And then you simply wait. You wait for inspiration, and no matter what pops into your head, you write it down. Now, sometimes you might ask the question out loud, nothing happens. Wait. Sometimes I get lots of stuff right away, and other times it takes a while for something to pop in my head. Give yourself a break. Just wait for inspiration. And anything that pops into your head, you write it down. The key here is no self-censorship. Excuse me. No matter how off topic, no matter how crazy the thing that pops into your head is, I don't care. Just write it down. So if you're asking yourself, if my prospects would give me unlimited time and answer every question with complete honesty, what questions would I ask? And what pops into your head is, Do you think the moon is actually made of green cheese? Write it down. Now, that's a stupid question to ask a prospect, but write it down. Do you think the president of the United States is doing a good job? Again, I don't think I'm going to ask that on a sales call ever, but write it down. Is it okay to cheat on your taxes? Is it okay to cheat on your wife? It doesn't matter what pops into your head, just write it down. Zero self-censorship. And the reason we don't want to censor ourselves at this point is we're trying to encourage our own creativity. When you start self-censoring during the exercise, you are telling your brain, I'm not really that creative, or I'm stupid, or I'm wrong, or I'm blowing this, or I can't even believe I'm doing the stupid thing that Jeff told me. He's an idiot, and so am I. We don't want that going on during this exercise. We want to encourage our own creativity. And I promise you, you are creative. You see, if you've studied brain science at all, and you should if you're in sales, you should know that your brain always wants you to be right. Your brain will do things to make you right, to win. Your brain wants you to be successful. In fact, in his book, Psycho-Cybernetics, Dr. Maxwell Maltz says that you're born, you pop out of the womb with a success mechanism in your brain. It's already there. You are born to be successful, but your brain needs something to focus on. Your success mechanism needs something to focus on, and that's a goal. That's why having a written down, clearly defined goal is so important. So your brain's always listening to everything that you say, and it's always listening to everything everybody else is saying to you and evaluating it, whether it's right for you. And the reason it says on the screen, for those of you who are watching live, Avery is such a klutz, is because my oldest daughter's name is Avery. Now, Avery is a brilliant child. Well, she's not a child anymore. She's now 22. She's a brilliant woman. She's a brilliant human being. When I say brilliant, I mean she's really, really smart. She just graduated from the University of Virginia with a degree in aerospace engineering. You can't be a dummy and go to UVA, and you certainly can't be a dummy and be an aerospace engineer. Literally, my daughter is a rocket scientist. She's a great kid. She's always got anything she's gone after. She's always gotten it. She wants to be the president of this or whatever it is. She's just that kind of kid. I have 3 kids. I adore them all. Avery is just kind of that kid who gets what she goes after. Now, the reason I'm telling you about my brilliant daughter is because when Avery was a baby and was learning how to walk, if you have kids or if you have ever seen this, what do kids do? Well, they'll pick themselves up with something. They'll use a sofa or a chair or a table to kind of stand up, and then they stagger a couple of steps, and then they fall down. And kids don't know that they're supposed to be embarrassed when they fall down. They giggle, and then they get up and try it again until eventually they're walking. Now, my ex-wife, who's a wonderful mom, and I have nothing bad to say about her, I always have to caution people, this is not anything against her, to be funny or to be cute. Every time Avery would fall down, she would just say, Avery is such a klutz, or Avery, you're such a klutz. If I was standing there, Avery's such a klutz. Not malicious, simply something funny to say. But what do you think my 22-year-old daughter thinks she is? I promise you, she thinks she's a klutz. And I know this because when I put this deck together at the beginning of the pandemic to start helping people think in different ways, to be creative and try to make some money, even though things were going very badly at the time, I called Avery and I said, Avery, I'm putting together a presentation. I need to ask you some questions. First of all, do you think you're funny? And Avery, like her father, is a wise guy and said, I'm funnier than you, Dad. She is. Don't tell her I said that, but she is. Avery, do you think you're smart? She goes, Dad, come on. I'm a really bright kid. And then I said, Avery, do you think you're graceful? And she said, come on, Daddy. I'm a klutz. Now, is Avery a klutz? No, she's not a klutz at all. For those of you who don't know what a klutz is, by the way, that's kind of a careless person or a person who might stumble and fall, a person who's not very skilled. Dancers are good dancers are not klutzes. They don't stagger and fall all the time. So Avery said, come on, Dad, I'm a klutz. Now she's not, but why does she think that? Because she heard it as a young child. She heard it as a baby growing up. Is she a klutz? No. So my point in telling you this story is, please do not self-censor yourself. Your brain is always listening and it wants you to be right. During this process, just allow yourself to be creative. So if you're sitting for more than a minute or two without any ideas popping into your head, just ask yourself the question out loud again. Remember, out loud. Your brain hears you differently when you say it out loud than when you just think it inside your head. So I want you to remember, your brain is listening, say it out loud. And most people, or at least many of the people I've spoken with and trained on this, find that they get more and more prolific the closer they get to their time limit. So usually when I do this, I start out really strong. There's about 5 or 10 minutes where I've got lots and lots of ideas. Then there might be 10 or 12 minutes in there where there's not a lot coming and I just keep repeating out loud whatever I'm trying to solve. And then towards the end, in my case, 30 minutes, about that 23, 24-minute mark, I start getting prolific again. So it doesn't have to be that way. Just be gentle with yourself. Whatever's popping into your head, write it down. Do not beat yourself up. Now, you get to the end of the time limit. In my case, 30 minutes. If you're still writing, if you've still got ideas, keep going. Let the ideas flow and keep writing. But if you're actually done, stop, go over your list, and cross off any of the things that don't belong. So if you wrote down, do you think Donald Trump was a good president? Well, we're not going to ask that on a sales call. Cross it off. Do you think the moon is made of green cheese? Cross it off. But what happens is now you are left with a list of ideas, in this case, questions to ask when you're on a sales call, which means you are prepared. What you don't want to do is be on a sales call and be winging it. Amateurs wing it. Professionals plan. Now, look, I don't have to take a list with me every time I go on a sales call. In fact, I would advise you do not print out your list and do not take it with you. I actually had that experience early on in my sales training career where I had written out all my questions that I could possibly ask. Not only did I write them out, I laminated them. I typed them out actually, and I laminated them and I had them on a clipboard. I'm on one of my very first sales calls when I was working for somebody else selling sales training. And I kept glancing down at my, excuse me, I had my clipboard on my knees. I'm sitting in a chair across from a VP of sales. And after every answer he'd give me, I'd look down at my clipboard. And he finally said to me, Jeff, what do you keep looking at? And I was proud. I held up my list of questions. I said, oh, I got a list of questions here to ask you. And he said, you're such a good sales trainer that you can't remember what questions to ask me? You can leave my office right now. Literally kicked me out of his office. So don't take your questions with you, but you do want to be prepared. One of the questions I ask myself before I go on any sales call is, what information do I need to get today in order to consider this sales call successful? What information do I need to get today in order to consider this sales call successful? Well, when I know what information I need to get, I now know what questions I need to ask. And if you're brainstorming on a new idea, a new project or something like that, please remember that it's harder to get going than it is to keep going. Get started. The first step is typically the toughest. Most goal setting experts, and I co-authored a book on setting and achieving goals, most goal setting experts say, if you don't take action towards achieving your goal within the first 72 hours, you probably never will. I say within the first 24 hours. Better yet, with my coaching clients, when we set a goal, I want you to do something immediately. Just get started because it's easier to keep going than it is to get going. And I love this quote by Ann Landers, which says, opportunities are usually disguised as hard work. So most people don't recognize them. I am what I call the Ralph Kramden of salespeople. And for those of you, and I'm guessing most of you, are too young to know who Ralph Kramden was. Ralph Kramden was a TV character played by a comedian called Jackie Gleason. He was a guy who lived in Brooklyn and he was a bus driver. He was always coming up with $1 million ideas. He's going to make $1 million all the time, easily. Well, I am the Ralph Kramden of salespeople. For 48 years, I've been looking for the easy way to make a lot of money in sales. Haven't found it yet. I'm still looking, but what I have found is that if you do it right and you put in the effort, you can make a ton of money. But it does take work. Look, sales is not an easy gig. I often say it beats digging ditches, although I don't know because I've never dug ditches in the hot sun, but it's mentally exhausting. Put in the work, put in the effort. There's no reason why you should not be making a crap load of money in sales because that's the opportunity that sales offers us, especially for a guy like myself. I'm a college dropout. I'm not bragging when I say that. I'm not proud of it, but I just wasn't applying myself in college and I got a job and it turned out to be well, it was originally a job in customer service, but I got introduced to sales by the owner of the company. And 48 years later, by the way, my father, stepfather, and both grandfathers were career salespeople who never really made a penny in their lives. I swore I'd never go into sales, but 48 years later, I'm still selling and helping other people sell more effectively. So you've got to be willing to put in the work, and that's including working on your business. It's only 10:43. We don't have to go a full hour here, but I'm happy to take any questions if anybody wants. Let's see. I don't think I see anything. Ian wants to know, how's it going, Jeff? It's going terrific, man. It's good to be me. As I mentioned, I live a block from the ocean. It's a nice day here. So at some point during this day, my body's going to be walking the block away and getting wet, and there's probably going to be some tequila shots involved. It's a holiday weekend, so thank you for asking, and I hope things are going well for you. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds if you have any questions on anything we talked about today or anything else. Maybe if you're in a particular situation trying to close a deal and you need some help, I'd be happy to give you some advice. So I'll tap dance for another 30 seconds or so. And then if not, we're going to end for today. Please do remember that the year is half over. As I started out this conversation, there is still time to pull it out. If you're struggling, if you're way below your goal, if you don't have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline, then get some help. Again, it doesn't have to be from me. There's lots of very talented people who can help you. I always tell people, invest in yourself. It helps to have somebody who you can speak to, who can point you in the right direction. But there's YouTube today with a gazillion videos for free from guys just like me, guys better than me, guys not as good as me, but there's lots and lots of ways to improve your skills. Work on yourself, work on your business. I did not pop out of the womb born to sell, although some people would say I have a lot of the natural tendencies that tend to make me better at sales. And the truth is I do. I am outgoing. I am friendly. I am funny. I'm honest. I truly care about people. I love helping. I'm reasonably intelligent. There are certain characteristics which make you more likely to be successful in sales. And I do have some of those. But the reason I'm successful in sales, as far as I'm concerned, is because A, I do work hard and smart. And B, I've treated it like a career, not just a job or a way to make money. I read most of the sales books that come out to this day. 48 years in sales, I'm still reading most of the books. I still go to seminars. I still talk to other trainers and other coaches and experts in the industry who know what they're talking about, because I don't know everything and neither do you. Invest in yourself. Let's see what Michael North says here. Love the suggestion about learning the Challenger sale. Can you expand on this? The power of no. So yeah, the Challenger sale, I think it came out about 4 or 5 years ago. I forgot the name of the company that created it. They are a training company, so it was brilliant for them to write a book about this great methodology. It talks about the 5 different types of salespeople, and every different sales book talks about different types of salespeople. I think one of theirs was the lone wolf. One of them is the challenger, and the challenger is a salesperson who knows their industry so well, what they have to offer. They know the prospect's industry and what their challenges are better than the prospect does themselves. And the challenger is the salesperson who's willing to say, I know that's what you think you want, but it is not what you want. I know you think you want a Toyota Camry, but you really want is fill in the blank with whatever car or truck they really need. The challenger is somebody who challenges in a polite way, but not being a wimp about it, challenges the prospect. Most of us don't like to challenge the prospect because we think they've got the money. They can do whatever they want. And that's true, but we have to bow down to them. We have to agree with whatever they say. In this book, they claim that challengers, they surveyed lots and lots of salespeople and sales managers. They claim that the challenger will outsell everybody else by measures probably 10 times what most salespeople would do, simply because they have the information they need to be an expert in their industry and in the industry that they're selling into. When you Michael North, I know you're a headhunter, a recruiter. I was a recruiter too for 5 years. People often come up with a job description that they think is perfect for what they're looking for, except that if you bring them the person that they describe, they're not going to be happy. They're not. You have to challenge them and say, I know you think you want this, but in my professional opinion, which by the way is a phrase I love, I use it all the time. In my professional opinion, here's what will really help you, and here's why. Of course, you can't just tell them without explaining, but that's what the challenger sale is all about. Being willing to challenge your prospects' ideas, desires, thoughts, goals, wishes, and being the expert that guides them in the right direction. In terms of the power of no, I'm not 100% sure of what you're exactly talking about, but if you're talking about turning down clients or being willing to say no to them when they're asking for unreasonable things, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. The reason that most salespeople are unwilling to turn down deals or confront a prospect who's not treating them well, or maybe trying to take on business that they should have no business taking on, is simply because they aren't seeing enough prospects. It's like this. If you're working on one deal, you can't negotiate effectively. You need that deal desperately. the only way to negotiate effectively, and really the only way to sell effectively, is by having so many prospects in your pipeline that you can afford to pick and choose. That's the only way I can do it. Look, I need money just like you do. Not you, Michael, but like everybody does. I still need to make money. I still got 3 kids and an ex-wife and a dog who's been to the vet twice this week. There's a real one. Forget about health insurance for us. It's the vet that really gets the big bucks. But yeah, I need to make money too. But the only reason I can afford to only take on business that I really want to work with and turn down business or fire clients when necessary is because I have a constant stream of people that I'm speaking with at the top of the funnel. And for anybody who does not understand what the top of the funnel means, if you think about your pipeline, the potential people who might do business with you that you're actively speaking with, not suspects who you may want to speak with at some point, but the people you're actually speaking with. Think of it like a funnel, which looks like this and then narrows out at the bottom. Well, lots and lots of stuff goes into the top of the funnel, but way less comes out of the bottom. If you don't have enough at all times at the top of the funnel, you can't possibly close enough business. And that's when we get desperate. That's when we cut corners. That's when we take on business we have no business taking on. That's where we overpromise and underdeliver. It doesn't make sense. I understand why people do it, but what makes way more sense, Michael, and anybody else who's listening, and I can't emphasize this enough, prospect your ass off consistently and effectively. I've got one coaching client. I think I'm not going to mention him by name, but I think I've mentioned this before. He made, I think he was in the 200s the year I met him, and his goal was 300. Made it, got him there. This year's goal, $500,000. Now, is this guy a genius? No, he's a smart guy. He's a really good human being. He truly cares about his customers, and he's really good at his job. This guy's going to make 500,000. By the way, I wouldn't bet my daughter Avery's life on it, but I bet maybe my middle child. No, I wouldn't do that either. I'm just kidding, of course. But I can almost guarantee this guy has the desire, the commitment to his own growth, the knowledge that he doesn't know everything and needs somebody to chat with twice a month. That's me. I'm honored to be his coach. And he's going to do it. $500,000 simply by being willing to put in the effort, having a concrete goal. So I think I got away from your original question, Mr. North. I hope I answered it for you. And I think that's about it. John Hill says, like you, I'm always learning constantly. Got to be a lifelong learner. And somebody, whoever this is, said, I walked away from a deal because I thought it was more trouble doing the business with that person, even though this person was a referral. Perhaps that's my friend Bruce Kasserman. Yeah, it's just not worth it. The mental anguish you get from dealing with an angry client or an upset client or somebody who's just a ball buster, it's just not worth it. It's just not. It's like, I'll share this one thing with you guys, and then I'm going to let you go. So in my role as an outsourced sales manager, which is one of the product services I offer, or as a trainer, I'm often offered jobs by my clients. Come be my VP of sales, come be my sales manager. And my standard response to that, actually, let's see, we get rid of that. There we go. Bingo. My standard response to when a client, of course, I'm always honored when a client offers me a job, but my standard response is, you could not pay me enough to do that. And I'm not trying to insult them. In fact, I'll share this with you. One time I said this to a guy. He said, Jeff, come be my VP of sales. And I said, you don't have enough money to pay me to make it worth my while to do that. This guy stood up from behind his desk, and I'm not kidding, veins were popping out of his neck. And he screamed at me, you don't know what I've got in my pocket. You don't know what I mean, this guy was really angry, like I had insulted him. And I said, look, I didn't mean to insult you. I'm not counting your money. I'm just saying, I love owning my own business. I love being my own boss. I love doing exactly what I'm doing, working with companies like yours to help you train your salespeople and make them more effective, and then moving on to the next one. The amount of money, the amount of money I would ask you for in order for me to give up all that and come be your vice president of sales simply wouldn't be worth it. So I'm not talking about what's in your pocket. I'm just saying you couldn't pay me enough. And he said, Jeff, everybody's got a number. What's yours? So I said, okay, you want me to be your VP of sales? This was about, I think, 20 years ago. I said, I want a $450,000 base and another $450,000 a plan, which means I want a $900,000 compensation package. And he said, that's crazy. I'm not going to pay you that. And my answer was, see, I told you so. So get serious about your career. put in the time and effort, get clear on exactly what you want. Remember, there's still time to pull this year out, and review this video and the one we did a couple of weeks ago. You can see them in our YouTube channel. I also just came out. I think I previewed these. I think in January I said they should be done by the end of Q1, but my sales training videos are now actually ready. They're on a platform where you can invest them. If anybody's interested, just send me an email or DM me, and I'll be glad to share pricing and all that kind of stuff with you. And I will end as I always do. Please be sure to have a great holiday on the 4th of July. Be safe and celebrate if you're here in America. And remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Thank you for your time and attention, everybody. Have a great weekend and a great holiday if you're celebrating. So long for now.